are wrong. We love you and politics support you.
But America,
and love are right.
We are not going back.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Raised Red Living Blue podcast. I've got a special guest in the studio today, Amanda Pusczek.
Nailed it. Got into one.
I mean, come on. I'm good at this. What can I say? Well, introduce yourself. Let us know what district you're running for, what seat, all these things.
Okay, awesome. My name is Amanda Pusczek. I am running for the U.S. House of Representatives, so Congress. And I'm running to represent Alabama's 4th Congressional District. I made it through the primary and I'm out on the other side. And I am a nurse running because America and Alabama desperately need some healing. We need to keep these hospitals open and we need some change.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, you're just out there on the campaign trail telling it like it is.
Very direct.
Yeah. And one of the few, I mean, that really came out of the primary on the other side, you know, successful. So that was huge. I really, you know, have said this so many times and I believe it to my core that, you know, the Democratic candidates this cycle, I mean, so just a stacked bench of just good souls.
Outstanding. I have to say that this has been an incredibly daunting task. So the district I'm running in is the reddest district in the country on paper, okay? But I say only on paper because only 34% voted in the presidential election last 2024. 34% is not conclusive in telling me that this is a super red district, okay?
Right. I really feel like that's kind of
everywhere
in Alabama.
Everywhere. And so like in the district, it's just people are so fed up. They're so fed up. Everyone is experiencing reality. So even though we say things like it's the reddest district on paper or it's the reddest district in the country, we are not sheeple. We feel it, the real impact, and they're not having it from Republicans anymore. They're not eating it up and they're turning on them, and it's been delicious to watch.
So have you gotten a chance to talk to Republicans hear their frustration?
Absolutely. So this campaign does a lot of things that you see in Democratic spaces, right? Because that's where a lot of people are more comfortable hearing from me. But I go to where people are. And so that means going to things like community fire departments. And whenever they have events, I'm usually the only Democrat there. And what happens, especially leading into the primary, we're coming from like Wes Allen was coming to this event and John Wall and all of them were coming out, and they would say things like, my number one priority right now is Sharia law and protecting us here in Alabama.
Right.
And then people, what do you mean? I can't afford to feed my kids. We're having to choose whether or not we're keeping my parents on medication. We can't keep the AC on. What are we going to do in the future? All of these anxieties. And what was being given to them, fluff. People are not having it.
Yeah.
People aren't having it.
Well, I want to, you know, obviously we want to, you know, contrast your platform with your opponents and talk about your core big rock issues that I have here on my trusty whiteboard. But before we do that, you have a Raised Red Living Blue story. You were raised red, right?
I was raised red. So we were just talking about a little bit about my background, and I was born in Ferguson, Missouri, and I was born to 2 alcoholic parents, very strong Republicans. But I will also say that my family is not a very civically engaged family. Civic engagement starts and stops with a presidential election.
Yeah.
That was the way that I was raised. My mom and my dad divorced when I was fairly young, and we moved to Alabama when I was 6, and this has been home ever since. Went to community college and all those things. And part of my background was I want to be of service to alcoholic parents. That's something we say a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous, to be of service. Huh. What that means is that my life only has value in what I can contribute to other people and making their lives better. That is something that has been a really central point of who I am and led me to the path of nursing. Okay.
Yeah.
And very early on, I was one of those people where I was like, hey, my parents are pretty bitter all the time. And I don't think I want to be that. What is breaking that them down and pulling them to this point? Because I know in their heart of hearts, they're also really good people. Okay. Racism, bigotry, voting red, all of those things. And that really shaped me. Okay. I want to be something else. So making that really early on decision, that decisive choice of I want to be something different. I didn't know what that looked like, but something different.
What age was that roughly?
Ooh.
Just approximate.
Young.
Young.
There was the use of the N-word by my father when I was young about my friends. How dare you? I didn't know what the word meant, but I saw the pain in their eyes, and I knew that that was not okay, and I was never going to be that.
Interesting. Did your dad make the move with you to Alabama?
No, still lives in Ferguson, Missouri. Try to go see him when I can. We just don't really have a close relationship. I still love him, still care about him. And I tell you what, you want to talk about a complete change in a person. Someone that, again, I grew up with someone saying the N-word and a completely different person now. This was a Trump voter 3 times. And right now, we can talk about universal health care. We can talk about making changes to governmental reform and having more open conversations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, complete change in not only his complete perspective on the world, but then civic engagement as well, and how he views things kind of gives you an indication of what the state of America is, you know?
It does. Just this is a outside the box question, but a little bit. But are they both still drinking?
So it's kind of interesting. They actually experienced alcoholism at different points in time. So my father was an alcoholic pretty much off and on my entire life. My mom struggled with it in her younger years and then again in her later years. So my teenage years were primarily teenage, early college, and then she passed away when I was quite young.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's experiences that shape you and kind of give people a better insight as to who you are, and why you're running.
And so where was she politically around the time that she passed?
Oh my gosh, was super excited to get Trump into office. So she passed almost 6 months after he had gotten into office the first time and was still very gung-ho and very Team Trump, though I will say at the time had lost a lot of her cognitive ability. So, you know, we lost the person that she had been in her earlier life at that point.
Why did you decide to run? I mean, I'm always so curious about why people decide to get into politics because, I mean, you're married, correct? You've got a full-time job as a nurse.
I am not working currently because I'm telling you I couldn't do it with the amount of running that I do.
Did you have any idea it was going to be this time intensive?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
So full backlog, looking back, I, again, wasn't really civically engaged. And then Roe v. Wade happened. That was a big ring-dinger for me. Oh, okay, these are rights that I thought was going to exist. And apparently what was so very cemented to me, had been told to me was going to exist forever, was very frail and was a very different reality. So I started paying more attention then. As a woman who is married to the love of her life, my high school sweetheart.
What does he do?
He works in IT, and right now he works at the Toyota plant. Like many people, has to commute quite a ways, and unfortunately they're not unionized. But going back, because that's a whole other...
Is your spouse red or blue?
He's blue.
Okay.
He's blue.
Right.
That would be difficult if we weren't... I know some people do it. I know some people do it. I just don't know if I have the mental capacity to do that.
Especially in this day and age, because it's gotten so extreme with the views.
I feel like that, I'm glad that's not something that we have to deal with. But I became more civically engaged, and then everything started coming out about Project 2025 and 2024. Right. And I stepped into the ballot booth. I looked up and down. There were so many freaking seats that were unchallenged, and I was livid. I naively felt like I had done my part as the voter, and I'd showed up and I was ready to cast that ballot to everyone that I possibly could to come out swinging. And there was no one to give it to. Okay, I'm taking you at your word. You say that you're going to do this. This was back in 2024, okay? We're talking like November 4th. This was the conversation of what can I do? Where am I and my knowledge and my background of being a nurse and my expertise with a very unique career that I've had? Where can that be leveraged to the best of my ability? It's probably going to be federal. And then the big bill happened. Well, now it's absolutely federal because we're talking about 52 hospitals at risk for closing in Alabama. And here we are. Been running ever since. It was a decision that, okay, we're talking a federal seat. That's the largest district in our state. It's huge. How am I going to be able to work? I'm probably not going to be able to work. How much are we going to be able to live off of savings? How do we make that stretch? How do we make that budget? Also, we know that economically speaking, everything happening in the big bill, tariffs, everything just looking down the pipeline, right?
Right.
Can we make this financially work? What sacrifices does that mean for us? And there was a lot of hard talks. And we decided that this was it. Okay. That it was okay for me to do this as a family. We're all right. Let's move forward with it. Does this mean that as a woman who needs IVF and needs expensive healthcare treatment, we're probably not going to be able to start a family? That's the trade-off.
Question: if you guys had any kids yet? Yeah.
That's the trade-off. My career on hold. That's the trade-off. Eating lots of beans and rice. Realistically, that is the trade-off.
Wow.
And having that sort of a very frank and deep discussion way early on. So yeah, this is everything that I anticipated that it was going to be. And I have been spending over the last year and a half preparing for it.
Wow. Do you go into your boss and just say like, hey, I need to take a leave of absence because I'm going to run for office? Or how does that even work?
So at the time I was working for a telehealth company. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep working this job for as long as humanly possible. I really loved it. And then cuts started happening. It was a venture company, telehealth is often venture companies, and they did layoffs. And I was like, okay, well, I guess there's really no point in trying to find another job at this point.
Be a full-time candidate.
Yeah. I mean,
the decision was made for you.
Yeah, it wouldn't be fair to anyone who employed me, to be honest. It wouldn't be fair to any of those patients that I started developing a relationship, the employer, any of those things. And that's being generous to say that I need to be kind to the employer. But yeah. I mean, truly, it was part of the factor of the equation of, okay, we're already so short-staffed of medical providers, medical workers already in our state. I don't also want to kind of bone someone over in that aspect.
Well, I do want to point out, I mean, it means something to me. It may mean something to some folks out there, but, you drove from Huntsville to be here today. We're recording in Pelham. A lot of folks want to do these interviews via Zoom, and you were pretty adamant about doing it in person.
Yeah.
So I think that just kind of shows, like, you're all in.
All in, absolutely all in. Last week was 1,600 miles, and that was an easy week. This week, it's probably going to be over 2,000. It's true. Wow. It's true. And you know what? And that was the other thing, too. All right. Is my little Honda Fit ready to take this on? It's paid off, and we're really going to be testing that. Yes. I've said for quite a while that, my car, this was my first car out of college, and it was going to be paid off, and I was going to drive it into the ground, and I seem to be really keen on testing that.
Yeah, you're doing it for sure. That's incredible. So when you're driving around, like, what is it? Just a tip before we get into all the meat and the potatoes of your campaign. What does like a typical day look like?
Honestly, it's so unpredictable. How can I use my time to the best of my advantage?
And is somebody doing the scheduling for you? Or are you doing it all yourself?
Yes and no. There's a lot of interconnectedness, especially before the primary. Most of it was just me.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. All of any sort of political operatives in the state at that point were so distributed between so many of us, which was the great part of having a primary is having so many candidates. The bad thing is then you don't have as much infrastructure available for everyone to pull from.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have 2 co-chairs, which I am so incredibly grateful for because they do help me schedule with a lot of stuff. But I'm also all about efficiency. If I am out in the district doing something, then I'm also stopping as many businesses and talking with people literally exactly where they are as possible.
Just kind of randomly, just like, hey, I'm going in this business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I try to chart them out ahead of time. Okay, this looks like this would be a main thoroughfare. This looks like the kind of business that for sure is going to be impacted. Like when we talk about any of the bills in our state recently, all of these smoke and vape shops have been heavily impacted by that legislation. So talking with the business owners, especially as it was happening, how are you being affected? What do you need from Congress right now? What do you feel like your representative has not been doing in this particular area? So as all of these changes have been happening both at the state and federal level, addressing those individually. If you have a farm and farmers are being affected right now by the Strait of Hormuz,
Huge.
I'm stopping and I'm going to ask you, especially if I see you out working in the field, because that's how I learn. That's how I learn. That's how your voice is better represented in DC.
Well, I feel like this is an ideal segue just to mention that you're pretty heavy on pointing out the fact that your opponent is pretty distant, not very visible in the district.
Yes. So I am running a little bit of background without going too much into the weeds because we could be here all day. Just because the gentleman that I'm running against has been in the seat for 30 years. So there's a lot to unpack, right?
And is how old? Sorry.
Not as old as you would think. Okay. So he actually got this seat when he was 35. Very much had been groomed for it his whole life kind of thing, and has had this seat since. He's actually 65, 66, I believe.
Right. He's close to my 70 cutoff. I mean, 30 years.
30 years.
It's time for some new blood.
Here's the thing, and that's the conversation that we have over and over and over again in the district is, do you know who your representative is? Most people cannot tell you who it is. If they do know who it is, there's only anger behind the way that they say his name. It's not Robert Aderholt. I love when he did. It's Robert Aderholt. It's very much that. And having those conversations of, you don't know who he is. Okay. 30 years is enough time to make generational change. Okay. We are talking about someone who has been in office for the entirety of almost my entire life at this point.
Wow.
Has he made things better? No. Can we afford to give him another 2 years in office with kids still drinking from lead water, these hospitals closing, and we can't afford anything? Because I think we need to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, do you feel like you're getting over the hump in terms of, is it fair to say he's a do nothing or do very little? He's not going to work as hard as Amanda Pusczek.
That is true. He is absolutely not going to work as hard as Amanda Pusczek. And I think that Robert Aderholt is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. So on paper, this man holds a very strong amount of power in Washington.
I never see him on it. Does he ever do interviews? No, I've never seen him on anything.
No. And the reason for that being is he's never in the state. His primary residence is in Virginia. As a matter of fact, that's where his kids went to high school and college and still reside. At one point, he had considered running for a seat there. And on his personal website, for the longest time, I haven't checked it recently, it showed his home in Virginia. And it talked about if you liked Virginia, maybe you'd also like North Alabama.
Wow. All right. So this kind of feeds into where I was kind of going with this initial line of questioning is that in terms of you getting over the hump or just making some progress, because although this guy is noticeably absent, his primary residence is in question, it doesn't seem like he's all that dedicated to the state of Alabama, but he is a Republican and you're a Democrat.
I am a Democrat. It's been incredibly interesting. So there's a couple of different voters in my district, specifically when we're talking about Republicans. There are the Republicans who are very much aware of who he is. You've not done anything for our district in the last 30 years. Very adamant, very much against him. There are people who feel the pain of what is happening to them economically, specifically, and all of those things currently, who then lay that at his lap that maybe had not known that he had existed before. At the same time, those people will also be pro-Trump still.
Yeah.
which is kind of wild. The reason why I say all that is because you're watching compartmentalization in real time. The people who are pro-Trump are being pro-Trump still, while Robert Aderholt is voting in perfect line, in perfect unison at every single turn. So instead of putting the blame on the president, they're putting the blame on him instead. It's very, very interesting. So when I say all of these things combined, this is a very different race than we have ever had before. And I think that when we were first starting this race, everyone was trying to keep it very, very local, especially when I was speaking about my opponent. We only talked about Robert Aderholt. We never, ever talked about Trump. Well, now Robert Aderholt, his only fallback is, I am Trump endorsed. That's it, because he has no other piece of legislation that he can put forth and say, I have done this for you recently. That is the only leg that he is standing on. And with Trump making this election all about him once again, that's kind of what we're pulling at, right? So it becomes an up and down the ballot, right?
Yeah.
Getting people, as many people as we can, getting someone like a Doug Jones in, getting people like in our state representatives as much as we can, and pulling as many people in as we can, and working together to get as many voters out as we can.
Well,
and letting folks know you ain't got to vote the whole ticket. You can skip over them, which is also what I've heard a lot of, especially in the last few weeks. I plan on not voting for this person, or just abstaining. Won't go necessarily and say Democrat, but an undercount is an undercount, and that still works in our favor.
Well, here we go again, right, with the politics of fear. The rhetoric that is ramping up now is the big C word, communism. We got to fight like hell against communism, or we're not going to have a country anymore type stuff.
Sure.
So I'm curious, like, if you've had a conversation with a voter in your district who said, like, Amanda, I like you, but I can't vote for a Democrat.
Yeah.
Have you had any breakthroughs in that regard where people are like, you know what, maybe I could vote for a Democrat?
So I would say that first and foremost, I am running to break up the establishment. Truly. We, as most candidates, have not had a lot of state and or national support, which also means that I get to dictate exactly how I want to vote and exactly how we represent Congressional District 4.
Love it.
Direct input, okay?
Because you're not in anybody's pocket.
I am in no one's pocket. The constituent that I'm running against, 30 years, a lot of pockets. The laundry list of pockets. The laundry list of corporate donations, PAC money. It goes on and on and on and on. That's what I'm running against. That is what we hear over and over and over again from people is, I'm so tired of these corporate sellouts. And it's black and white. It's black and white. And that is the opening start of a conversation right there, is how do we make changes? You feel like you are not being represented currently. This is why.
Yeah.
Making it real clear.
Yeah. So when you say the establishment, you're saying, or are you saying, that is a Republican and Democrat establishment? It's not just a Republican establishment, or what are you saying?
In what way?
Well, so I've had some Democratic candidates on the pod this year who have said, like, I would not say that I identify 100% with the Democratic Party. That there's reform that's needed on both sides. It's something that I see Republican candidates not being able or willing to do, to say, yeah, my parties need some work.
Oh, yeah.
You
so
know?
I go back to yes and.
Yeah.
I'm a Democrat and I see that the system is flawed. Okay?
Yeah, like, I'm a Democrat, but,
right.
and nobody should be taking
we should still
PAC money.
No one should be taking PAC money. We shouldn't be having, we need term limits. We desperately need term limits. We would also need age limits. Like, these are structural issues that we have. We've had this great succession of power from Congress to the executive branch. Governmental reform is how we not only begin to repair some of the bridges and undo some of the damage that has been made, but that is how we make sustainable change and prevent the next Trump, right? Because Trump is just a symptom. Trump didn't would love to think that he's something else.
Yeah.
But he isn't. He's a symptom of the structures in place and the disillusionment and the cessation of power over time, right? So the long plan has always been for the 30 years from the Heritage Foundation and everything like that. What we are doing right now from the Democratic perspective, what I see is that the establishment is going, okay, how do we rewind the clock? What I'm seeing from progressives and other people who are younger like me is we're looking forward of how do we prevent this from happening and what are long-term solutions. And I think that that's really resonating.
Well, to me, there's a lot of breadcrumbs. There's a lot of paper trail. So, like when you look at the fact that, what is it by the most recent data that like over his first term and now to date in his second term, Trump has added $7 trillion to the deficit.
Right.
So I just don't understand, like if I'm a Republican and I feel like, or how can I be a Republican that feels like that the future of our country has to be in the hands of Republicans if our debt is unsustainable and yet we have a president, the Republicans control all three branches of government and we're still going in the wrong direction.
Right. And just setting money on fire, it seems like, with zero accountability. And I feel like this is just a personal anecdote. I feel like the trust has just nosedived for us, the American people, certainly me as just a lay person, as a voter in the American government. And what I say is when we get these through social Twitter government announcements or anything like that, and then we're supposed to take it as word, but not word, but maybe kind of, and then the actual truth comes out much later. Compartmentalizing this, contextualizing it further, we were told that this was a $400 million jet that Donald Trump was receiving and that would eventually go to his presidential library. Now we know that over $132 million of our tax dollars have been used so far to refurbish that same jet. But we only see the tweet on the front end. And then because there's so much going on and because this administration is so shady, let's call it like it is, they are shady and they bury stuff and they try to make it seem like things have gone away. We find out after the fact. The problem is now we're also dealing with polio in the country and measles and 1,000 other problems that Qatari jet is back of mind by the time the reporting comes out.
Right. I mean, you're talking about setting money on fire that could
feed kids.
Yeah, like help with this Medicaid issue, help with these hospital closures.
1,000 other things I would like to use $132 million for. It's disgraceful. Like, it makes my stomach turn, We are living through the time of the greatest wealth inequality that we have ever experienced in the world. And at the same time, we are living in the wealthiest nation in the world. And we can't feed our kids breakfast and lunch. There are kids going to bed hungry every single day. There are people who can't get access to things like disability services or elder care, and they're being put into homes to be left alone to die. We deserve so much better. Like, us as the American people deserve so much better. And I feel like we've forgotten that. And we've forgotten not only do we deserve better, but to hold these politicians accountable.
I love it. I mean, Alabama could be so much better. I mean, we deserve. Oh my gosh,
yes.
We deserve you. As our representative.
We have some of the most amazing people. I have to say that I was really, really concerned running for this position just as a very human moment for me, okay?
Yeah.
I love my job as a nurse. I think it is the best job in the world. And giving that up and stepping away from my career has been a very difficult challenge for me. And part of that was I feel like I contribute and I'm able to be a part of people's lives in a way that others are not able to experience through my career. But in running this campaign and being in the knit, in the grit, in the back roads and meeting with people one-on-one, this is absolutely the most amazing state. I truly believe that. I love this state so much. I love the people here so much. You can feel the kindness and the resilience in the dirt when you step in it. I love this place so much. We are the most biodiverse state in our country per square mile, and we have all of these amazing people and natural resources and a history of fighting and asking for more. And I feel like we've forgotten that, you know? And that's how we ended up here. We forgot that we dare defend our rights. That is what Alabama is. That is what I've been told my entire life. Okay, this is the Alabama that I believe we deserve, and we should be fighting for it. And we should all be fighting for it, not just me, because you deserve better.
All right, so first on the list is healthcare.
Yeah.
What do you feel like in terms of the healthcare issue? Like, what is the what do you feel like the Republican? There is no Republican plan.
I was going to say, what plan?
Let's just go ahead and the elephant in the room. Yeah, so they don't have a plan. They're just kicking the can down the road.
It's a free for all.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know, like how. It seems like they're doing all of these things, like they're coming up with these policies and plans or lack thereof that aren't going to help them get reelected. It just blows my mind. Like, how does kicking, tens of thousands of people off their health care, how is that going to, help this party?
So they don't have a plan. They do have a plan. Let's be honest. The plan is to make as much money off of us as Americans, privatize as much as humanly possible, so that them and, let's be honest, the billionaires and corporations that they're working for continue to make a cut. That is why they're okay with saying we can continually put a Band-Aid on it, and going back to what we were talking about earlier of us, the people, not holding them accountable and to a higher standard. We are letting them do it. Right? Healthcare has been a mess in our country for a while. When I was graduating high school and in college, we were coming out with the Affordable Care Act, which was monumental. I remember when we used to have pre-existing conditions, and I remember my family members not being able to get health care. We had the opportunity then to move towards universal health care, and we chose not to. That would have been a long-term solution for a lot of these hospitals. We talked earlier about 52 hospitals being at risk for closing in Alabama. The reason for that being 65% of the major funding for hospitals in Alabama come from a combination of Medicaid and Medicare spending. Why? Because we're a right-to-work state. Okay? We following all the breadcrumbs? Were you picking up what I'm putting down here?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the reason why those are our major funders, especially when we're talking about rural areas. Why? Because right to work state, less employment, less opportunities. They're definitely not going to offer insurance if they don't have to. We also have a large number of people who are dependent on Medicaid who work jobs, but jobs don't pay enough for them to also pay for insurance then, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the cuts with affordable care, which we've had this skyrocketing in premiums. What we need to do, from my perspective at the federal level, is one of the first things we need to do is reopen the affordable care subsidies and restart those. That's one of the easiest things that we can do to ensure that we're instantly putting money back in Americans' pockets. We're talking about 5 million Americans who have already lost their insurance as a result. And then we're making sure that they have insurance, making sure that we're protecting their lives, keeping these hospitals open, and then we're putting the money directly back in their pockets at the same time. That's one of the easiest things we can do on day one, and there's lots of us that are already on the ground, waiting in the wings with this legislation ready to go, because we see that that's one of the easiest solutions. And that's, when we talk about long-term solutions and moving towards universal health care, what does that look like? It means an expansion of Medicaid. It means in our state in particular making sure that we accept the funds from the federal government for a state expansion of Medicaid. And then again, reversing some of those things in H.R. 1, the big bill, and lowering the barriers for Medicaid and expanding services, not making it harder to get it.
So it's interesting because someone on a panel on CNN was talking about how just timely it is to be hosting the World Cup, where the majority of these countries, their citizens enjoy universal health care. You know, they enjoy health care as a human right, and we don't. It's just like when I was talking about like the success leaves clues and the breadcrumbs and all that stuff. It's like we have all these examples around us. Mexico, not too long ago, I saw where their president came out and said, "Hey, they're going to make universal health care an initiative of theirs." And all we hear in America is it's not attainable or sustainable because we have such a large population.
Which is false. It's blatantly false, and we are the richest country in the world, and I can't help but think that all of these smaller countries are able to make it work and make it happen for them, and we are the richest and most powerful country on the planet. You're telling me that we can't? I don't know. That sounds like it's time for us to step on some of that American greatness and get to work here. Like,
oh my God, I love putting their own words, throwing it back in their face because it's so appropriate.
Truly, if it's a challenge, then let's rise to the occasion. We have, again, going back to we are always trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
We have proposed legislation that is sitting in the wings, that is ready to go, that we can just move on. We can get into some of the minutia about how we want to execute certain things, like if we talk about raising taxes or something like that, how we want the money to be spent. But let's go. If there's anything that I've learned from this administration, speed is possible.
Yeah.
It is. So let's use it for good.
Yeah, COVID vaccine is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Well, I just did a post recently on universal health care, and there were 3 pros and 3 cons that I noted in my post. So I'm going to give you the pros first. Every citizen if we had universal health care, every citizen gets access to medical care regardless of income.
Love that.
Sounds like a pretty big pro to me. You reduce overall healthcare spending by cutting administrative costs. And the third one was no one goes bankrupt from medical bills. I mean, we're in a day and age right now where if you get a serious illness, like the thing you do after the diagnosis is start a GoFundMe account.
Yep.
Or somebody starts one for you.
Absolutely.
Because that's the only way.
Yeah, GoFundMe used to be when it first came out for you young people. GoFundMe, when it first came out, I remember kids in high school were going to use it to do like a video project they'd always dreamed of. And GoFundMe has come out and said that is no longer what their platform was used for. It's not a place of fulfilling hopes and dreams that otherwise may have never had a chance. It was always this kind of shot for the moon. No, this is people trying to survive. That's the reality. It's trying to survive. Getting by, it's bleak. It's bleak.
Well, I just feel like my wife is somebody who just hates paying taxes. And
same.
But I feel like I just, whenever we talk about this a lot. Whenever I hear, complaining about taxes, I'll just remind her that I said that's because you don't see your tax dollars at work for you.
Exactly.
You don't feel like improving your quality of life.
Exactly.
Making things easier for you. But what if you did? All right, let's get to the cons real quick. I want to get your thoughts on this. All right, so it's the reason people tend to be against universal health care. Fears of higher taxes and or longer wait times.
Okay. I
think they just see, like, in terms of longer wait times, they just think, oh, well, you get government involved, there's the bureaucracy, it's going to be just a hot mess.
Okay.
Number 2, concerns about government control over personal health decisions. And my point here is, well, they're already making them for women.
We're going to go through this one by one, Jason, because I can't. Okay, keep going. All
right, the last one is the belief that private markets drive innovation and choice. So out of those 3, cons, I think maybe that one might be the most appropriate. I don't know, but go ahead.
Okay.
Don't let me stifle you. You have at it.
Hit me again. So what we got for 1? Just start with 1.
All right, so fears of higher taxes and wait times.
I do want to increase taxes to pay for healthcare, but I specifically want to raise it 7 to 8% on the top 1% of Americans. To be clear, when I say the top 1% of Americans, that's 0.18% of Alabamians.
Well, and I feel like I'm interrupting you too often here, but here's my plea to like billionaires, or just, trying to make sense of this. So billionaires typically have a lot of employees.
Yeah.
They start businesses, they run these businesses. I mean, like Amazon, for example, massive operation. If we don't have good roads to ride on, all these packages, you seeing being delivered, transported via these semi trucks, they might have a hard time getting around.
Yeah.
They just use so much. Like, wouldn't you want your employees?
They're using our resources for free,
Yeah,
right?
wouldn't you want your employees to like be taken care of, and wouldn't you want them to be healthy? And this wealth they're amassing, they really can't do anything with it.
Correct. That's what I just keep coming back to, is at a certain point what we are setting ourselves up to. We're talking about all of these billionaires and now a trillionaire, sometimes maybe not, on Tuesdays.
Right.
That is generational wealth. That is dynasty wealth. That is the wealth of an entire country. You cannot spend that amount of money. It is not possible to spend that amount of money if we do not regulate and begin to break up some of these corporate monopolies and regulate and actually make people pay their fair share. We're also doing is setting ourselves up for that same group and concentration of wealth to never dissipate to the rest of us.
Yeah, I feel like for Mr. Tuesday, as you mentioned, I feel like for guys like him, it's like an ego thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so much research about, like, if you've got more than $10 million in the bank, it doesn't, like all these studies have shown, it doesn't do anything for you, like your mental health, your physical well-being, your overall happiness. Like, once you reach like 10 million, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really need more money than that.
Right.
To kind of have everything that you want. So,
and when I think we also need to, when I say generational wealth and creating a dynasty of wealth, what that also means then too is that disparity continuing, right? What's the difference? We could have a middle class. Right now, the median age for buying a home, the mode is 45, not the median. Median's middle. But the most repeated is 45. Everyone's like, well, I want to raise kids in a house. But I'm also supposed to be having these kids before my biological clock kicks in, and also hopefully not die because I can't get health care and all of the other things. We've set up the cards to make it very impossible for younger generations to succeed. And if we don't roll back and start giving them opportunity, kind of snuffing out a flame.
well, and I just feel like it's inevitable that we're in
late stage capitalism.
And we're getting to a point where I think there's going to be some kind of a revolt. Our planet is dying.
Yeah.
Morale, patriotism, whatever you want to call it. I mean, people are getting real angry out there.
Yeah. I think that the next 2 years and whatever this ends up looking like, the next 2, 4, maybe even 6 years is probably going to look rough. And I say that just because of the sheer amount of what's been done by this administration, right? They've moved with a lot of speed. That is something they've done extremely well.
Yeah, they break shit real fast.
Which means that we're having to go back and pick up a lot of the pieces. However, I'm also extremely ecstatic as to what the future could look like on the other side of that. Because what we have had up until now, I feel like, at least within my generation, I certainly was that way. I was complacent. I felt like all of those rights that I had were protected. I had been told that everyone had already fought for them and I was good. I could sit this one out, right?
Yeah.
And then I was growing up and I had read all the books, and I said, well, maybe I think if I lived during this time and era, I would be this way, or I would do this sort of thing. Jason, I never thought we were going to have to put up or shut up. Truly, I didn't. I didn't think that we were going to be I would be at 36 standing next to the exact same civil rights leaders on the steps in Montgomery that did this exact same bullshit over 60 years ago.
Well, and let's just make the point, when they were doing it 60 years ago, the backdrop of their protests were white people holding up signs that say communism, anti-communism.
Exactly. That's what we're doing. So what we're seeing is we're dragging up McCarthyism all over again because it's a repeat of the same playbook. And not to get too deep into it, but I think that makes sense. I feel like that makes sense because it's what this administration is comfortable with and what the establishment is comfortable with. We're turning to the same playbook over and over and over again, which is fear. Make people angry, make people afraid. That is what this administration does in particular. That is their go-to card, Something's going to happen. I knew something was going to happen. Whatever sort of positivity was coming out of this little rebellion that I knew we would have brewing amongst us blue dots, whatever word we use in a positive manner was going to be flipped on us. Okay, keep moving.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where you want to go with the healthcare thing, but I just had this pop in my mind that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been very vocal. She's like, I don't know what procedure she had to get done, but she went to Mexico. A lot of people go to Mexico to get things done. And when I think, Trump especially would have you believe Mexico's a shithole. So why are people going to Mexico?
For medical tourism.
Yeah. Why is this such a big trend right now if everything's so great in America?
Yeah, if everything's so great.
We're so higher evolved than they are.
It's becoming more and more where your socioeconomic status dictates your health, where your wealth dictates your health, And as us in these rural areas here in Alabama begin to see our resources draw up, that ends up becoming who survives and who thrives. If you are a woman like me and you want to be able to have a family and you need IVF, you're probably going to have to leave the state. It's a 2.5-year wait list in our state. And we're talking about $50,000 a round. We're talking about multiple rounds. But if you have the money, you can pick up and leave the state and come back.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
If you can't have access to the procedure because doctors have picked up and left Alabama because it's harder for them to practice medicine here because of the changes in laws, you can go to another state and come back. And I think we need to be really clear that that is the rules for thee and not for we.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening. When we're talking about this legislator in our state that consistently comes against healthcare workers and rights and rolling back bodily autonomy, it's not for them. It's not for those people. It's not for people in power or people with wealth because it doesn't affect them. What happens to us as people who do not have the same access is we die younger. We die younger. We burn through our bodies at a faster rate because we are working ourselves to the grave in order to be able to afford to live and to do the things like pay for insurance and, God forbid, actually have to go see a doctor. We're paying the consequences literally with our bodies and our wallets.
Well, afford healthy food.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Afford healthy food.
It's crazy. I want to see, though, when we look at this second concern that people have about universal health care, and it's about the government, making decisions about their health care for them. So I mentioned it's, pretty clear that's already happening for the female population in our country. I thought in 2024, boy, was I wrong, but I thought women were going to show up. I thought they were going to read this Project 2025 bullcrap about the right to the voting rights, and then overturning Roe v. Wade. I thought, oh my gosh, because it's what is it? It's almost 60%, and this has probably changed. It's probably higher, but at the time when Roe was still very much established and in effect, like 60% of Republican women were for it,
Yeah.
like for abortion.
Yeah.
So I was like, these women are going to show up and they're going to kick Trump's ass. It didn't happen.
Did not happen.
I really feel like, there was a big surge in the Democratic vote, but I still feel like it was low, super low. What's everybody doing? Do you think, we've talked about disillusionment a lot, but do you feel like everybody just feels powerless? Like I need people to get out of their seats and go vote.
I feel like people feel powerless, and I feel like our education system here in Alabama, as far as like civic engagement, has not behooved us. So especially like when Roe v. Wade happened, exactly what you said, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. That's wild. People my age, same thing. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. People who were already left-leaning maybe had concern about their future of like their grandkids and what that may look like for women in our state. I will also say that there were some women who said, I'm no longer of childbearing age. It does not apply to me. I'm not happy about it, but that's the reality of what it was, right? There are people who said that.
It doesn't affect me, so what?
Yeah.
Who cares?
There are people who said that, just like some people who say, I don't think that we should have universal health care because I had to pay for insurance and I'm on Medicare now, so it doesn't matter. There are those people.
All right, number 2, voting rights, and we kind of had a little bit of a segue here. I talked to some people in 2024 that were like, look, if this SAVE Act, if it passes, I'm leaving the country. Like, this is no longer America if it passes.
Yeah.
I think it's just very important that we have you here as a female, prominent female politician, senator in our state, is very much for the SAVE Act. What's the difference between like your viewpoint on the SAVE Act and Katie Britt's viewpoint on the SAVE Act?
I think that we need to call this what this is, which is the SAVE Act is to not make elections easier. It's to create more barriers, and it's to disenfranchise people.
Because it goes into what I was saying though about like, I just baffles me. Like, how do the Republican Party...
Let's just call it like it is. I think that's the first step, right?
How are they going to remain in power?
That's what we got to do.
Is
we got to say what it is, okay? So that's what they're doing. We're not protecting elections. We have very, very, very little evidence of election fraud. And part of the reason for that is because it is so varied by state, and every state conducts their own elections. That's part of the reason why it's designed in this way, right? We continue to throw millions of dollars every single election cycle, especially here in Alabama, and we turn up just this many amount of voter fraud, if any, every single time. So that's not the problem. What we have a problem of is low voter turnout and disengage and disenfranchise voters. We need to make sure that we are creating a more equitable space where people are able to have their voice represented. So reinstating people's rights, making sure they are not gerrymandered out of existence, and that these minority voices have an actual voice at the table.
I love it. I wanted to point out, so just how ridiculous and how damaging this situation is. Jay Clayton, who sat for hearings today in regards to his being confirmed as Director of National Intelligence.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so he was asked by John who won the 2020 election. His response was, I'm not going to go there with you.
But I believe he had the most electoral votes.
So he won the election.
He followed our process, had the most electoral votes, was declared the winner, and
who has the most electoral votes? Is it the person that wins or the person that loses?
I think that's your characterization. I'm not going to continue to do this with you.
It seems that folks who are nominated for these positions just fundamentally refuse to disagree with something the president says. And the problem I have with this is he isn't in the room today. You're going to be in a room with him many times. And at times, you should have a difference of opinion. And if you can't disagree with him when he's not in the room, Are you going to be able to disagree with him when you're sitting across from him in the Oval Office or the Situation Room? That's what I struggle with, because this job is different. This job, it's not about softening the edges when the truth is unpleasant. It's about delivering information and making sure the president understands that information.
Don't confirm these people.
To me, that's immediately disqualifying.
I'm so sick and tired of this. I think that, again, going back to that accountability and transparency component of we're putting people into office that are deeply unqualified is my first hang up. And number two, if we can't agree on reality, you do not need to be from a position of power where you are then speaking on behalf of our government, because it is dangerous to Americans' lives.
I don't see how more people don't understand just how damaging it is to sow so much doubt into a process that is so secure. I mean, there is evidence of fraud.
Yeah.
It's so minimal that it would not change the outcome of any election.
Here's the thing. I would rather personally, this is just me personally, as a voter, I would rather know that my fellow voters have more of an option to have their voice heard, where it's more accessible, easier ballot times, a longer period of voting, right? Maybe let's make it 2 days, something crazy, right? And have the voter fraud percent go up by 1 or 2% and have voter turnout increase by 25% or something. Trade-off. Absolutely, that is worth it to me, and that would make a better democracy, a better representation of us.
God, if we just moved it from Tuesdays to Saturdays. I mean, come on.
Gosh, it would be so much more convenient. I would love a Saturday and Sunday voting period.
Well,
That'd be magnificent.
We're going to get a presidential address tomorrow night
Okay.
on voter integrity.
Cool.
So I just want to point out, I also made a post about this recently, but there has never been any evidence produced, despite years of claims, no court, no independent investigation, no state election body has produced credible evidence that the election outcome of 2020 was fraudulent or stolen. Yet we're going to have a presidential address on this.
Cool. Release the Epstein files.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what that is.
Well, I just want to point out there for the naysayers out there that 60 lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign and their allies were all dismissed or lost in the court, including by judges Trump appointed.
I do not think that the lay public who maybe does not have the in-depth political knowledge or whereabout that probably you and I have, right? I realize that for a lot of people, the last thing that you're thinking about when you're living paycheck to paycheck is how many lawsuits the Trump administration has been going on and what jurisdiction and how many states and what exactly that means as far as it playing out up to the federal court, and then continue to trace that for months on end as this administration has been in office for 45 years. I say all that to say not a lot of people know that these sorts of things happen. They threw every single stinking piece of spaghetti at the wall and have been doing so for years. This man loves to talk about himself. And if you don't think that we wouldn't have just a bucket of evidence if he had it, right now, we would have seen it and heard about it 10 years ago. It's so ridiculous.
Well, listen to this. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, led by Trump-appointed officials, called the 2020 election the most secure in American history. Former Attorney General William Barr stated that the Justice Department found no evidence of widespread fraud, especially none that would have changed the outcome.
How many times has a different person been designated, a new team been assigned? How many millions of dollars have we spent of taxpayer money investigating and digging into this same election over and over? It's not there.
Well, so this guy...
It's not there. It's very clearly not there.
So
That's been the conclusion over and over and over and over again.
this Clayton guy that would refuse to answer this question under oath is probably going to get confirmed because the person that is in this position on the interim basis was put there specifically to try to find some evidence of what apparently does not exist.
Correct.
So it's all relative in terms of how are they making it so bad for people, everyday Americans, but yet still planning on never relinquishing power back to the Democrats ever?
Yeah.
How is that happening? It's all connected. It's all related. You know, they're going to disenfranchise voters. They're going to make it harder to vote. You know, they're going to take women's right to vote away with the SAVE Act. Or, I mean, Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee just, you know, she was asked about this. And she said, well, people are getting their birth certificates and all this stuff handled every single day. Like everybody's getting prepared for these changes.
So you're in favor of the SAVE Act?
I am in favor of that.
So
Absolutely.
Isn't it true, though, that the way the bill reads right now, many women who are using their married name could not get the documents to prove they are who they say they are?
Oh no, that is not. People are getting birth certificates every single day. The state of Tennessee, you can go online, get a birth certificate. People show IDs in order to pick up pharmacy prescriptions. They show IDs to get government benefits. They show IDs to pick up tickets for events. People are going to be able, people have photo IDs.
I think that it's important for us as anyone who is not team rollback of rights or the actions of this administration. If you don't like the actions of this administration, then I'm talking to you, because it's a lot of us. We have a lot of different complaints, okay? What we are seeing is a combination of two things. We are seeing decades-long planning, and we are seeing buffoons. And those two people are united together to see what kind of stuff that they can mess up. And unfortunately, the rest of us are living around through the mess around and find out part, and we're having to see what sticks. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what happens when this is this cobbled coalition. So you have a Trump who's like, I'm never letting go of power. Republicans who are saying, I'm never letting go of power. The techno-autocrats who are saying, we want to make this oligarchy and cement our power and collect wealth and hoard it here forever kind of thing. And then you have everyone else who says, no, we don't want that. We need to fight against that. And when we have these two people that are working together, they're throwing so much at the wall, what's going to stick? And that's kind of the anxiety I feel like we're all living through, right? Of, okay, we know all these things are going to play through the Supreme Court. Where is it going to hold? Where is it going to fall? And we're always constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. At least that's how I feel, right? I feel like every day I'm looking to see what other shoe is going to drop. And part of going through the anxiety process for me as someone who's running for office is planning for the contingencies of, you say you want to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to assume that every single one of these is going to go through, that you told me you are working towards. And if something gets stopped along the way, heck yeah, but I would rather have something on the back burner, on a back point in my mind, this is how we back up ready to go, than be clutching my pearls going, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. You did it for real? We need to have a plan.
Yeah, we do. All right, so next on the list is data centers. I just wanted to point out before I turn it over to you, a recent comment by Tommy Tuberville.
Oh, okay, sure.
If you are onto this or not, but Tommy Tuberville is like, his stance is build, baby, build. Like as many data centers as possible. So apparently Texas is the same way. They're building data centers as fast as they can. Tommy Tuberville is so pro data center. He says anything that is negative, anybody talking negatively about data centers has been influenced by Chinese propaganda.
That's wild.
So I feel like
completely out of pocket.
This is like a nonpartisan issue where people are like, I don't want these freaking data centers.
No one wants a data center.
So this should be disqualifying. I mean, regardless of where this man lives, you make a statement like that,
That's how I feel. Okay, so I want to talk about AI data centers because you and I were talking about.
And why should be? Why, I want you to educate people why they should be worried about them. Why is it a big deal?
So we are hearing the talk about AI data centers a lot, and currently the way that it stands, there's very little regulation in place. There's two forms of regulation that we depend on. We depend on federal and we depend on state. Alabama is not meeting the moment at all as far as AI legislation. As a matter of fact, we have basically little in terms of protections, meaning that if an AI data center company wants to come out here and build, they can sublease with a private landowner, and there's very little protections in place as far as they have to supply their own infrastructure, tax plans, and protections for the local workers, protections for local wildlife, or any of those sorts of things, okay? Typically, when that happens, the federal power would then supersede. This industry is very, very new and very underregulated as a result. Why? Because so many of the people who are in power currently, especially within the federal government, are accepting donations, money from these AI companies, a Meta or a ChatGPT or OpenAI or any of these, okay? So what they want to do in Alabama is build, baby, build as much as humanly possible before we institute any sort of federal regulations. That's what they're doing. They're playing the game of the sooner we get this up, the better, and then we're good, right? We just had this one that's building here in Birmingham, 30 years without being able to readdress the taxes, the tax status, and people didn't get a vote on it. People didn't get to have a say on it, and that's really upsetting people. So what does that look like from the federal level? What are some protections that we could put in place? We could put in place that in order for AI companies to be built for the foreseeable future, let's say a 10-year moratorium, that they have to provide their own infrastructure. They have to build their own infrastructure. You have to build your own renewable energy sources and offset and contribute to the power grid. That's something that we can put into place.
Because is it not a serious concern that the stress that these data centers could put on power grids?
Absolutely.
In terms of costs being levied back to the consumer?
And so that's one of the big concerns is it's absolutely going to skyrocket our power bills. The problem with that being is like Alabama Power and TVA are our two main power sources here in Alabama. And they're pretty much allowed to do what they want. TVA has not had an audit in a very long time. And they've asked for an increase in their capability to expand on green projects. And unfortunately, they have not gotten the support for that. So it's not just a use of the power, it's also the use of the water. And then all of that water then being circulated to cool down all of the towers. Okay.
Yeah, because isn't there...
I'm very visual.
Okay.
Okay. So these are the processing towers. Let's say that these are the towers. Okay. This is like the modem. So like if you had a bunch of computers stacked up on top of each other, this is where all the thinking happens, right?
All right.
If all the thinking happens, it puts off a lot of heat. To put off a lot of heat, you have to circle the water around it to keep it cool, okay? Just like running a giant AC unit all the time.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be clean water. You can run the same water through it again. That is a concern, but that technology's changed a little bit. So we have to circulate the water. That takes a lot of energy. That's actually where the primarily high usage of energy comes from, is the cooling of the water to help with the heat output from all of the energy being used. Also with that, because of the sheer amount of energy being used, all of that heat, you also have a lot of noise, which then damages local wildlife, it endangers any sort of animal patterns and things like that. Not to mention if you just hear a all day, every day, incessantly, it has a real life mental and physical and emotional effect. Can you imagine?
No.
I mean, surely when we have these discussions, this is the real sort of real life impact that we have to think about. And we're talking about something being built and having no power to go back and have any sort of changes to a contract, a very binding agreement for 30 years. these are the sorts of things that my position as someone who's running for Congress has to think about getting ahead of. And how do we look into the future and regulate it, not just now, stopping as much as we can right now, to think and consider about our resources before we continue to blast off, build, baby, build, as it were. If we want AI data centers to exist, we need to prioritize people first.
Well, I would say this, as a voter,
Yeah.
I would say I want to vote for somebody that says, for a politician that says, all right, my priority is hospitals and schools. Like, I don't, like, there's got to be something wrong with this picture, and it should be, in my opinion, common sense that if we see hospitals shuttering and AI centers booming and all over the country, we got a problem.
And that's part of it too, is we go back to that accountability and making sure that things are earmarked. I want to know where my tax dollars are going, okay? So when I'm sending my federal tax dollars up the chain and we're collecting up here and then it's coming back down to Alabama, I want it specifically earmarked for Alabama's educational system. I want it specifically earmarked to improve Alabama's infrastructure and to keep our hospitals open. I do not want our federal funds to go into the general fund where KIV and whoever's next can use it as their personal piggy bank. And that's part of the way that we get around that. What we hear all the time when I'm meeting with like municipal people who are working on projects talking about, I've been trying to get this money from the federal government for years. What I hear over and over and over and over again is, well, they said that they put this money over here, but then in the state legislature, they decided to use it for something else. Okay. This is what I'm hearing on the ground.
Yeah.
So how do we get around that, and how do we have a solutions? That's what we're going back to time and time again. So we directly earmark it for. This is the project that we're using it for. And when we talk about earmarks too, it is also my responsibility to make that incredibly transparent to you and easily found information. I don't know about you, but I'm so terribly interested. I want to know where my dollar bills are going, okay? Now, I want to know what projects it's being used for in the district, and is that really the best use of that sort of project? That should be easily compilable, found information. If it's going across my desk, it should be very easy for you to view as a layperson on my official government website as well.
All right, corporate regulation. What do we need to know about corporate regulation? How is this corporate regulation, how is this affecting our lives in a negative way or a positive way?
Okay, so corporate regulation, I just want to hammer home that Congress has the power to regulate corporations. We've done it before, and I think that's just the first and biggest thing I can even say to you is that we have the power to do so. I feel like right now what we hear from Congress is what we see is a lot of hand waving and tossing up like we can't do anything, and that's just a damn lie. Because we can. We have so many laws on the books, like the Sherman Act of 1879, that ended the Gilded Age the first time. We did it!
Yeah.
You know? We have things that we can do that we just need to enforce them. And that requires us putting money into like the FTC, giving them teeth to be able to fight and enforcing these monopolies and having them broken apart.
Yeah.
These are options. That's just all I want to say about corporate regulation, because I feel like that is the number one thing that I hear from people is no one's holding these corporations accountable. And the fact is Congress has the power and they are choosing not to.
Okay. Government reform. What's this all about?
All right, government reform. So we've talked a lot about today about there being a lot of issues that led us to this point. Mm-hmm. We've also talked a lot about how the role of the federal government, especially in our state and in the South, is that extra veto and the babysitter and the voice in the room to hold us accountable. It is very clear that we still need that.
Yeah.
Government reform means that we have to ensure that all of the mistakes that we go back and we fix in Congress once we get elected don't just happen right over again, right? We just talked about the Sherman Act of 1879. All of these things, how do we make sure that we don't keep slipping backward time and time again? Because that's what happens. We make progress and then someone says, oh boy, we're being too nice to each other. People are getting uppity and able to afford things. And then they start to quash us back down.
Yeah.
Right? People in power are always going to want to hold on to power. That is the nature of power and wealth. So we, the people, have to prioritize government reform, and that means making systemic changes, not just now, but continually returning to vote over and over and over and over and over again. I think that that's something that maybe we lost or maybe wasn't instilled in my generation enough, and certainly not in the younger generation. And that's not something that we as the older people have done to them. We've not done the best in education in handing on that message, right? Of things are not fixed in one election. Things are fixed with persistence, and it's fixed with turning up for every single election, every single time. Local, state, federal, again and again and again and again. What we have seen from this administration, or from in general, over the last 50 years or so, the slow shifting and ratcheting to the right. It was calculated, it was decisive. So how do we move things back towards the middle and work towards a more equitable future by protecting and ensuring a lot of these rights? So going back to some of those things like term limits, 3 in the House, 2 in the Senate. I don't want to be there for any longer than that. I don't want it. Hold me accountable to it. As a matter of fact, the gentleman who I'm running against, that was what he originally ran on, was term limits.
Oh, God.
30 years, y'all, the irony.
See, to me, that's disqualified. That's not the first time I've heard that. I mean, nobody needs to be in after the age of 70.
No, I think that it is my job to work towards a future where retirement is even possible, because what I'm seeing right now is more and more people coming out of it, delaying it, or convinced that they'll never have retirement ever. You know?
Well, the reality is, like you already mentioned, they're going to die younger than they should.
And they're going to die younger than they would have anyway, so why would I even plan for that? Which is also real bleak to hear coming out with 20-something-year-old. But we need age limits. We need age limits. I want to be able to retire at the age of 65, and I should have whatever time I spend in office, whatever sort of form that may be. At 65, I'm out, okay? Because I should have already spent the time leading, training people up to come up after me and leading some sort of road work and roadmap behind that it's time for me to go. Let me use my expertise somewhere else. Let me go volunteer somewhere. Heck yeah, let me just go volunteer for a few years. That sounds great. But let me leave. That is the American dream. That is the American dream that I am fighting for, both for myself and for you.
Well, if I look at your opponent, and let's just say I'm so fed up that I really feel like I'm identifying more as an independent.
Yeah.
Okay. And I go back and I do some research, and I don't see legislation that your opponent has sponsored, and I see 30 plus years in office. I mean, to me, that just clearly says, hey, this is about power and ego. It's not about the people. It's not about change. It's not about making a difference.
When we talk about things like corporate regulation, the power of Congress, all of their ability and the power that this gentleman wields, I just keep coming back to that over and over again as the chair of an appropriations committee. That's
a big deal.
That's nothing to fluff at. It's
Right.
nothing to bat an eye at. That is a lot of power. And it seems as if it's a choice to not work on our behalf.
Yes. I mean, it just like they don't, I mean, it's definitely not a priority.
No, it's not a priority. If it was,
crazy.
it would have been done.
Yeah. It just blows my mind. Like, to me, it's so black and white. Like I can see things so clearly, and I'm just wondering why everybody else has a problem with it. If you go back to things like the rhetoric we heard from the right as a warning, if Barack Obama was to get elected, oh, the country, is going to be in ruins.
Sure.
All right, so we had 8 years of that, and
We were fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we're not fine is under Republican leadership, in my opinion. That's when things get thrown way out of whack. But if I'm just a free-thinking person, which I think, a lot of people are struggling with out there, I would go, well, gosh, I had a person who was raised red and now living blue. He's a Marine veteran. Ooh. Had him on. He's one of my early guests. And he said this. I was like, what happened to you? He's like, well, I grew up in this red household, and I just kept hearing about how this is bad, how this is bad, how this is bad. And when Barack Obama came on the scene, it was like, oh my God. I mean, everybody in my family was like, this is like a life or death situation for our country. And when that season passed and there was no flames, no smoke, no destruction, we still had a country, and it was much more united than it is today. He was like, you know what? I think my family's full of crap.
Yeah.
I think I've been indoctrinated into this damn mindset that is just not serving me or them.
It's not serving me. And going back to the power that Congress has, it's such a choice of right now, no one can afford anything. We're talking about the power that Congress has to control price gouging, to lower the costs of everyday Americans that they're experiencing. And I need to correct myself, which is why I'm circling back to this.
Okay.
He did introduce legislation in the last year, and that was for the 250th commemorative coin.
Oh, wow. For putting Trump's face on it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's we see that across the states.
I think we really need to sit with that. This is the Labor Chair Appropriations Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives of Congress, representing a district for 30 years where people still drink from lead-contaminated pipes. They can't keep crayons in schools. We can't feed our kids. We have no access to education, a major cutback in accessibility for the needs and health care of the people in this community, a decrease in our life expectancy. And this man had the audacity for the first time to stand up and introduce legislation for the first time in 4 years for a commemorative coin. That is the solution that he offered Alabama, that he offered America. That is disgraceful.
And it's why, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe this is why we will probably not see you and your opponent debate.
He has not answered any mail so far. He has been sent some certified mail that we are waiting on a response from. So that will be the next thing. But this gentleman has not had a town hall that was publicly open and did not require $250 or more per head for an attendance in over a decade. So I imagine the answer here is no. But I also plan on putting his face on every billboard that I can, calling him out about it as well.
Wow. That would be awesome. I would love to see that.
You can make that happen by donating at amandaforalabama.com. That's Amanda, F-O-R, Alabama.com.
Oh, I love it. And I am on amandaforalabama.com right now /shop. And I love your merch because it's just so in your face. I mean, hitting you right where you need to be. I mean, talk about who has come up with some of these concepts for some of these shirts.
Do you feel, okay, let me ask you this.
Yes.
As a layperson, and I don't get to ask someone this directive of feedback sometimes, so this is awesome.
Yeah.
What's the vibe? What are we catching from the merch? Do you feel like it represents me as someone who has now met me a few times?
Yes. And I feel it meets the moment.
Yeah. So I love that we're having this talk because this is such a nerdy and nuanced thing, but it is something that I think that I at least put a lot of thought into going into this campaign of what does it look like as a Democrat running in the reddest district in the country who's saying, I'm going to do it my way or the highway. What does that mean? Because looking and saying, we're going to have to do something totally different. And anything less than that is gonna read as inauthentic,
Yeah.
So what's something that I really love? I love nerdy things. So we did the Sailor Moon version of me, which is a cartoon that I grew up with, very, very popular, that's still making a comeback over and over and over again. It's amazing. Fighting fascism by moonlight. So fighting evil by moonlight is something that the character says, and so we have me dressed up in the sailor uniform, turning into this magical girl ready to fight off fascism. Whose house? Our house. Because it is. This is our house. The U.S. House of Representatives is supposed to be the best representation of us as Americans in Congress. That's what the U.S. House is supposed to be. Uncompromised, unbought, unpaid for the working class, because that's what I am. I live paycheck to paycheck. That is what our house does. And we're not taking money from corporations. That's exactly who we are. And I'm patriotic. I love my state. I love our country. And it is because of my love that I'm fighting for it. No bigot is going to run me from my home, and no bigot is going to bully my neighbor.
Mm. That's a mic drop moment right there, I think. I just love it. I mean, you're such a breath of fresh air, and I love everything about the campaign you're running. I want to know on primary night, just what that experience was like for you, or was it the next day? I mean, how long did it take where you had that check mark by your name, and what were some of the emotions and things that were swirling around in that brain of yours?
Moving into the primary, I was pretty sure I was going to win. Just because of the way I'd been doing the campaign, I tried to be very transparent. You see me, a lot of people have seen me from the beginning, just out here running around. And I've tried to be that because that is what's needed. It is the largest district in the state. And we're talking about folks who've been neglected generationally, So I was pretty sure that we were going to win the primary. And then when we won the primary, and it was like, all right, let's rock and roll. Let's dance. And that has been turned up more and more and more each week. And it's been more fuel on my fire, I think, to keep me going, to see just the regular articles you would assume to be coming out by him, from him, about his campaign, about his office, all of the things, right? We found this grant of $1 million. We found this grant of this. And no, we promised this other thing is going to be coming down the pipeline in 8 years, even though we just had 6 plants closed down within the district in the last 6 months. Don't worry, there'll be jobs. Super, I promise, in 8 years, wink, wink.
Yeah. Don't mind these data centers.
Right.
Those aren't going to take any of your jobs.
Like, to see, and I know why, it's election year, right? That's what we're going to see. But to see that happening while I'm also just watching people struggle more and more each day when I'm in the district. Like, I am so fired up and ready to unseat this gentleman, because we have got to.
Well, I would just love to see what in Alabama, what a United States of America would look like with candidates who get elected who actually know what it feels like to live paycheck to paycheck. Because the person you're meeting at the political rally, in most cases, is probably in a financial position where they don't have any like day-to-day stress.
Absolutely.
It's not a paycheck to paycheck situation.
No. And that's going, we were talking about government reform. It's something that I think about, and that's just a conversation for another day. But how do we make elections more affordable for people to run? Okay, it shouldn't be all about money. That's a big part of that is removing the dark money component out of it, right? The ability for corporations to be able to spend money and have that sort of impact. I also think we need limitations as to how much money can be involved, period.
Yeah.
Across the board. By doing that, we make it easier and we level up the playing field just a little bit more, right? What I heard and what is the struggle as someone who's currently doing it, the reason why people don't run for office is because A, they don't realize how easy it is. Truly, like in terms of the amount of forms you need to sign up for, the amount of paperwork that needs to be done, getting your name on a ballot is a fairly easy process. It's absolutely everything else that goes into it, all of the money and the time and the sacrificing of your own personal life that you cannot do as if you are already living paycheck to paycheck. So how do we make it more equitable in the U.S. House, in the government in general, by making it easier for regular people to get in and hold office?
I love that. I think just one other common sense point that I would make is that to have, we've had this Republican majority in our state for so long. You just go back to why the founders created two parties.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about like a one-party system or one party in power. There's no balance there.
Right.
So that was a very big warning. So like you should just be looking back, and this is why you say, and I just couldn't agree with you more, how this has been a decades-long coordinated effort of misinformation, of fear-mongering, all these things to keep people voting and keep these people in power, that the thing they care about most is enriching themselves, enriching their power and influence. Yeah.
The only people they like is them.
Yeah.
Truly.
So I mean, that should just be like a telltale sign, despite the fact that, time goes on and change doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Our lives aren't getting better by the day.
No.
They're getting worse.
No, they're not. And it does become part of our civic responsibility to put the spotlight on them. Because let's be honest, that's what they've been able to do. They've been able to be toads cowering in a dark corner and not have their name out and about somehow still in 2026, right? Which is a choice. Like we need to really think about that. We have the entire world in our pocket where we're all more interconnected than ever, right? And we talk about getting in our own political silos and everything like that. It's real interesting to me, though, that these exact same algorithms aren't pointing to me who my representatives are. It's choice, right? To keep us from being civically engaged. So recontextualizing that and think of what that looks like moving forward. How do we get people more engaged? How do I right now, as someone who's running, explain that to people, get that out on a broader message, and then also encourage people to think about that moving forward and hold on to it and not let it go,
Love it. But is there anything like in closing that you would want to say to the people out there, or maybe how they can, like, what does your campaign need right now?
Okay, let's start with that. Let's start with what campaign needs. First off, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. That's a huge help in of itself. Right now, it is so incredibly hard for people who are left-leaning and or progressive to get onto the algorithm and then stay onto the algorithm. And I do mean the algorithm, because there's so many platforms and all the algorithms are different and they all change all the time. So one of the best things that you can possibly do is wherever you're listening or watching to this is share it with your friends on that platform and then on another platform so that there's automatically some cross-posting. Super helpful. Okay. Another thing that you can do is just liking it and leaving a comment. I know it's so simple, but it really does help with things. If you have the financial capability, I would love for you to donate to this campaign. We try to work really, really hard and make sure that any amount of money that is spent by the campaign is absolutely necessary and is used to the best way possible. We also, for full transparency, do have to collect your data and report for FEC for filing and compliance. However, I think it's important for you to know that we only release that data for compliance purposes. We do not overindulge your information. What I mean by that is what I hear from people all the time is I don't want to be on any political list because I get phone calls all the time. Constantly. And it's because of the way your information was reported by the political candidates committee to the FEC. Okay?
That's a great point. Yeah.
So for someone I'm asking for you to please make a donation or at least consider it, I need to be as transparent as possible and let you know, hey, this is something that I've thought about and I'm going out of the way to protect your data and protect your data.
It's like respect.
It's mind-blowing. And you know what? If you can't make a donation, or maybe if you did, but you know what? You're like, I want to check out this amazing merch that I keep hearing about. You can go to amandaforalabama.com. That's Amanda, FOR, Alabama.com, where you can also deep dive into policy. We talk about a lot that Democrats have wonderful policies, but maybe they don't have the best messaging. I like to kind of think I have both, but in case I left out any policies, you can go via there and see if that interests you. The number one thing that anyone who can do for me who is listening right now is go vote. Vote on November 3rd. Get engaged. Stay engaged. And get more engaged. Whatever you are currently as far as your current civic engagement, if you are regularly voting, if you are regularly active in your community, push a little bit further. That is what I'm asking you to do. Because the biggest thing that I hear from people is I'm afraid to talk to someone else. But what I also hear from people is when I talk to people, we almost always agree because things suck. Start that conversation, push yourself a little bit more, stay engaged, take the breaks when you need to, go vote. Wash, rinse, repeat, over and over again, because this election is not a one and done. And we're gonna have to do this for many more. And I'm ready to fight, not only in this election, but over and over again. So I hope you'll fight with me.
I love it. This has been such a great experience, a great interview. I hope you had fun.
It was great.
Yeah. But you were such a great guest. Yeah. So amandaforalabama.com. I would just say my closing remark would be, if you're a Republican, write Aderholt's office and say, we want to see you in a debate. We want you to debate this woman.
Absolutely.
We want you to stand on a debate stage and explain to us how putting Donald Trump's face on a commemorative coin is going to help with all the issues we have. Healthcare, education, retirement,
accountability.
You name it.
Get out your house in Virginia. Come down and see us here in the district. I've been out here doing it for over a year. It's about time you show your face too.
I think we need to leave it there. Amanda Pusczek. Thank you for joining us on Raised Red Living Blue.
Yeah!
God, I can't wait to see you win.
Politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and we support you.
But America